Hi guys, Fernandes Lembo for the season wrap-up edition of On the Grid. Last week, John, we were sort of previewing the Braden River St. Thomas Aquinas game, talking to Coach Bradley. Suddenly, a week later, we don't have a game on Friday. We were both at that game. I thought it was a matter of a couple of Pirate mistakes. But I think as an overall general talent level was superior on St. Thomas Aquinas' side. Maybe wore him down as the game went on. Competitive game, but what did you see from your angle?
No, I agree. I mean, obviously, like we talked about and Coach Bradley talked about against Aquinas, you can't make too many mistakes. I don't think Braden River did. I mean, there's that one big turnover before the half when the ball was knocked loose of Huseman and they recovered it and scored. Aquinas did.
I thought that touchdown was the one that, put him up by 11 points. Really sort of putting the screws.
And the thing, too, is the play before that, the Pirates converted the 4th and short. So they convert the 4th down. They're feeling pretty good. I mean, they score there. They're up by 3 going to the half. Now it's like you go from being up by 3 to down by 11. It's a big 8-point swing. But, like you said, I thought Aquinas, talent-wise, was a better team. And I don't think Braden River gave that game away.
No.
I don't think it's a game where you say, wow, Braden River really should have won. If they have Raymond Thomas, it might be a different story. Maybe they can do a little more things offensively, get a little more creative. But, they just made a couple mistakes. And Aquinas, I thought, was a little better talent-wise than Braden River was.
And some people at the game were every game questioning the officiating. You got that one play by the 5-yard line on tape where Court Bradley insisted his guy picked up the ball and wasn't touched, and picked it up and ran for a touchdown. What did that could have been a game changer from your angle. Was it a good call, you think? Or
I thought maybe his knees were down. Obviously in high school football, you don't have to be touched. You can see as long as your knees are down, the play's dead. But again, we had the advantage of looking at it on my iPad. At my iPad 3 or 4 times, and Coach Bradley didn't. He just saw it, and obviously, so that was a weird play. Because initially, they blow the whistle, and then they talk about it, and they say it's going to be Aquinas' ball, forward progress. That would have been the wrong call. Because the kid clearly did fumble. But yeah, maybe if they don't whistle that play dead and he scores, it's 21-17. Who knows what happens?
Did they split the difference? They gave Braden River the ball and put it right there at the 5-yard line.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you hope that's not the reason they made the call. You hope they made the call because it's what they saw. They wouldn't, let's split the difference. You hope that wasn't a problem. But, my problem with the officiating, it's not, and not just that game, it's not the quality of the calls. I think my problem is a lot of times there's a little too much discussion, kind of slows the game down a little bit. It's like, make a call and just put the ball down. But, I don't think officiating was a crucial point of that game. No. I don't think the officials had a say in the final score.
No, not at all. But going forward, Braden River graduates a handful of kids, but they won their first regional championship in school history, made it to the state semifinals. Going forward for Braden River, much of the same next year, you think?
Well, we'll see. As you mentioned, they graduate a lot of guys. They graduate Jacob Huseman, the quarterback. They graduate 4/5 of the O-line. They graduate, a lot of key guys, in that secondary. But they bring some guys back. I think Tyrone Collins comes back, who had a terrific year. I think he had 6 interceptions. They bring back the center, Brandon Bostic, so that's going to be interesting. But what impressed me most this year about Braden River was this is the first time they had a season where there was some expectation. First time ever. Because last season, they came out of nowhere, undefeated, won a district championship, and they overshot expectations, I think. I mean, I thought that the 7A11 district with them, Venice and Palmetto was a coin toss district. Who knows how it would shake out? And they clearly were the better team. I mean, they played those teams 3 times combined, shut them out twice. That's pretty impressive. So I thought, really an impressive year at Braden River. We'll see what happens next year. I mean, can you expect regression when you miss so many guys? Maybe, but I think Kurt Bradley and Eric Sanders are 2 really good coaches, and I think they're going to, try and build something special out there.
Maybe that culture of winning has been established now, where they expect to go out on Friday night, and that's a big thing. When you expect to beat your opponent,
it is.
That's a big deal.
It is, and you hope that, if you're Braden River, you hope younger guys are seeing that, get kids who are in 9th grade and they want to play. That's the big thing, is really the ripple effect that winning has, and people want to be a part of it. I mean, in 2012, they lost their first 9 games. If you're thinking, I want to be a part of this, I don't want to practice 4 days a week and get my head handed to me every Friday. So, but now that they won something, and like Coach Bradley said it too, when we talked to him at the end of that game, he said this wasn't a football school, and tonight it was. It really was. That place was electric. And a lot of people there. We knew Aquinas traveled well. They didn't think they had like 5 buses of fans, so we knew they'd travel well. But Braden Rivers fans got into it. They were behind the team, and definitely a big step forward this year for the Pirates.
I mean, when you look around, taking a step back from Braden River and look around the area, I mentioned before we went on, a lot of ways it was the same deal. Usual suspects advanced into the playoffs.
Venice, Charlotte, Manatee.
Some of them got eliminated.
Right.
But in the very end, last year we had Manatee making the state semis, lose. Braden River state semis, lose.
Right.
Charlotte, Venice, Port Charlotte, all in the mix there. In your ways, looking back at the season, was it? Did it go the way everybody expected, including you and I?
I think in certain degrees it did.
Right.
Like we said, 7A, 11, we knew Palmetto, Venice, Braden River, 2 of those teams would go. That would happen. Manatee, we knew they'd be strong, and in a weak district, they knew, and they did what we thought they'd do. Venice and Charlotte were good. But this was a year, I thought, and I told you this, where a lot of teams took step forwards. Lemon Bay, the first championship in 12 years, district championship. Port Charlotte, first road win in the playoffs. Southeast from 1-9 to the playoffs, and a huge win at Hardee, maybe the big signature win of John Warren's era, the beginning of the John Warren. Even St. Stephen's, a team outside of the FHSAA. I mean, this is a team, I remember 7 or 8 years ago, they had a homecoming game, and they couldn't practice that week because a lot of the guys were like in homecoming festivities, and they didn't have enough guys. They didn't have enough guys to practice, and here they almost won a league championship. So, yeah, the usual suspects played well, but Braden River, obviously the year they had, Port Charlotte, Southeast, Lemon Bay. It was a year for a lot of other programs too, to take a step forward, maybe build on that as we go on.
And we're based here in Sarasota, so we would be remiss not to look at the Sarasota schools, except for Cardinal Mooney, which made the playoffs. The local schools did not make the playoffs again. When you look at Sarasota, Riverview going forward, obviously Booker, some young talent there, but it's all, I've talked to these coaches, it's all a matter of this young talent basically taking the step up and becoming varsity football players. And maybe Todd Johnson and Riles have that going on at those 2 schools.
Yeah, I like Sarasota High, what they're doing out there. And I think, I like the year Josh Booker had, Brian Gagg, a lot of young guys. And as I said earlier, sometimes when a team loses together, that helps it too, winning the other, losing the other. So, yeah, I mean, there's definitely some young talent in the area. And you hope that it's one of those years that a Booker or a Sarasota or a Riverview kind of puts it together, and does something special. I mean, those schools have had great years in the past. It's not like they haven't. They've had the tremendous years. They have their tradition at those schools. So it's just a matter of getting the right group to kind of come together and reestablish it. And like we said at Braden River, really kind of breeding a winning culture. And then once that happens, I think those schools can maybe do what some of these schools did this season. And,
it's a lot of younger guys that maybe we don't know about now. Maybe on the JV teams that we don't know. Maybe in the next year or 2, we'll be talking about their names.
Yeah, well, I mean, how much do we know about Josh Booker this time last year? And he had a huge year running the ball for Sarasota.
Brian Gagg looked great for a freshman
exactly.
quarterback at times.
I mean, who knew in 2011 who Jacob Huseman was?
Right, sure.
And he comes into the spring game and gets hit a lot, but Kurt Bradley loves how he kept getting back up, and look what that happened. So, yeah, that's the beauty of it. I mean, who knows where we'll be this time next season, in terms of, which teams go on, make the playoffs, and maybe this time next year we're talking about a state championship game. You never know. Now, that's part of the beauty of high school sports.
That's why they play.
Right, and high school sports too, with all like the coming and going, you never really know what's coming up and what who has that class that's waiting to kind of bubble up and do something special.
And also in high school football, even more than in college and the pros, emotion based on turnovers, swings and games are just so tremendous at the high school level that you really can't game plan for that sort of stuff on a weekly basis.
No, you can, and the only thing you can game plan is don't let it happen to you. That's the only way you can game plan. But for example, we talked about the turnover, that changed the Pirates game. That was a good play by Aquinas. That they swarmed Huseman and he went to throw and knocked it out of his hand. It wasn't like a dumb penalty where it's like, why are you throwing that ball? Or So a lot of times, sometimes the defense forces that kind of stuff, and that's what happened in that instance.
Looking at some of the other teams, Manatee, Venice, and Port Charlotte.
Right.
Manatee has Tariq Milton coming back, AJ quarterback.
Right.
You got Venice returning 18, Carpenter and Doss, 17 size return. So should these teams just pick up where they left off maybe this year and continue either growing or on the plane they are?
We'll see. I think Venice is going to take a step forward. I mean, this year they might have surprised some people. I mean, they had 2 guys back on defense, one of whom was Jared Hewitt, the other one Sage Lee. But yeah, I mean, they return a lot of guys next season. I think Port Charlotte, I mean, the sky's the limit for what they did this year. I mean, winning their first road playoff game with really 2 guys back on offense, one because someone else got hurt, and the year they had. So yeah, I think it's definitely looking up for those programs. As for Manatee, they do bring AJ back, the quarterback, who had a big year this year.
Sure, big year.
To losing some linemen though, to losing some of the receivers like KVS Price, who was a big part of that team. So and Lorenz Allen, the running back. So they're going to have to rebuild in some places, but. we'll see how they do it, and we'll see if, in the past, we've always had really good freshman JV teams. We'll see if that sticks next year.
We have the all-area team coming out, which is another reason to pick up the Herald-Tribune in the coming days or weeks whenever we put that together. Without sort of tipping our hand here, let's just throw out a couple of names that might possibly end up as our players of the year.
Maybe.
Elijah Mack, 1,280 yards, 23 touchdowns. He was a man among boys down there.
The Charlotte running back.
I didn't get a chance to see him, but from everything I've been told, this guy was a stud out there.
Yeah, he's committed to USF, and which right now, maybe when he first committed, people were like, what are you doing? And now it looks pretty good to the USF ad.
Right.
So, yeah, definitely a huge year for him, a huge year for the quarterback, Brendan Sims, too, in Charlotte. A big year for Jake Huseman out in Braden River, a big year for Kevin Johnson out in Southeast, Lorenz Allen out in Manatee. A lot of big years for some guys this year.
I mean, I like the job. You take away 2,000-yard rusher, a lot of it falls on the shoulders of the quarterback. AJ, 63% of his passes completed, 2,500 yards, 21 TDs. I think in the face of losing Johnny Lang, those numbers even take on sort of added importance.
I watched them last year when he started, and they played in Georgia open the season. He wasn't ready for varsity yet.
Right.
He wasn't that. And all of a sudden, we covered the game in Hoover this year, but the first quarter, I knew he'd matured and he'd really improved. And you got to tip your hat to the coaching at Manatee as well as the work he put in. I mean, he became, a true dual threat quarterback this year, and is a big reason they won 9 games.
You mentioned Lorenz Allen. He rushed for 1,200 yards, 15 touchdowns.
Yeah, went from slot receiver to running back.
Right.
Yeah.
But when you look at the team that advanced the furthest, Braden River, Huseman, great year, nice year. Raymond Thomas had 800 yards in 8 games. But individually, the team concept advanced, when you talk about individual numbers, they didn't match up to some of the teams that didn't advance as far as they did.
Right, and who knows what kind of numbers Raymond Thomas would have put up if he would have stayed healthy. He might have dwarfed a lot of those numbers that we saw, so who knows. But yeah, I mean, they really were a team, and I think Jacob Huseman, the quarterback, called it kind of a receiver by committee. He kind of picked and choose who he get the ball to. They made it hard to defend, and their line was so good on both sides of the ball, offense and defense, and obviously offensive line is really hard to quantify. You got pancake blocks and coaches tell you how a kid grades out. Right. But
quarterback pressures, it's tough.
Right. Well, the D line's a little easier to quantify because you do have the sacks and tackles and stuff, but offensive line, it's almost impossible. I mean, like I said, pancake blocks, but who knows how you...
I love pancakes. Are they blueberry? Are they pecan? What kind of pancakes are we talking about here?
Moving on, but they're really hard to quantify because, is there a clear definition of a pancake block? I don't know what it is.
Is it on your back where you're like a turtle and you can't get up?
I don't know.
I don't know what it is. But you mentioned defensive, how the metrics are easy because you got numbers.
Right.
Jared Hewitt, is it obvious based on the numbers that he might be our defensive player of the year? 105 tackles, 10 sacks, 9 hurries. Venice only allowed 123 points, and he was a big reason for that.
I'm sure he'll be in the conversation.
I'm sure he will be in the conversation.
And like I said, too, like we said, he was one of 2 guys back starting for that defense. So he was big on the field and in the locker room and at practice, kind of, with those guys and kind of teaching them the Venice way on defense. And, definitely a big reason why Venice was able to win a playoff game this year. And Braden River was kind of like a bandsaw they ran into, and they stopped them regular season, stopped them in the postseason too. So yeah, definitely a good year for Venice, and he was definitely a big reason why.
So you'll be reading about some of these names probably in our all-area coverage coming out. This is the last on the grid for football season. They want to keep it going into the winter. What do we call it? We're not on grid anymore. We'll be on courts. We'll be on fields. What are we going to call it?
Be on wrestling mats.
If you got any suggestions, email Lembo.
On a lot of stuff.
And we may consider them and then circular file them.
Exactly. So, exactly. Well, whatever the name is, we'll be here next week.
We'll be here next week talking about the winter sports.
Yep.
John, it was a great opening year for football. Hope to carry it through.
A lot of fun.
For the winter sports. So for John Lembo, I'm Doug Fernandes, and we'll see you next week on the Grid.